have a friend who's legitimately been waiting an entire year for me to make this video. Hello, Pookie. Hi, my name is Aaliyah, known as Ariam Aaliyah on here. And today I'm going to be talking about every single book. Oh no, my camera's falling. Every single book that I have read in the year 2025. You can't even see like the bottom of this. Like there's still more books. So I have my pile right here, and then I also have my handwritten list, not mind that, but my handwritten list of every single book I read in the year. So for some backstory, I did not start off the year with the big goal of reading a lot. I actually got into reading during the year, and well, not got into reading, but I made the goal of wanting to read a lot in February. Because like I've always loved reading. I've always been a big reader, but I hadn't read, like, I stopped reading for a little bit. And I felt really bad about it because like literally in 2024, I can name maybe 1 or 2 books I read that year. The rest, not really much. So I was like, I was at Barnes & Noble's at one point and a book caught my eye. This first book right here, it caught my eye and I was like, man, that book looks really interesting. I want to read it. And that's what got me into reading. And as you can see by this big old pile, I don't know why I'm so out of breath. Every time like I start a video, I'm suddenly like, oh my god, like ran a mile, when all I've been doing was like prepping, turning on the light, the fan. Okay, here's the first book, Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco. This book is so good. This book is so good. Essentially, it's about a character, the main character. His name is Remy Pendergrass. He is a vampire hunter. He's part of like this society and stuff where like people hunt, but he's like looked down upon, ostracized. People don't really respect him that much. And basically, this book was the book that actually started off my whole entire journey reading in 2025. Because the cover caught my eye. I am a firm disbeliever of don't judge a book by its cover. I think you should always judge a book by its cover. As someone who is pursuing graphic design, judge a book by its cover. Because yes, there are going to be some hidden gems that have horrible covers, but there's also going to be some really good gems that have spectacular covers, and I think this is a really good book cover. But it's a vampire mystery, like figuring out basically a whole new like type of strain of virus in vampires happens. And so the whole plot of this book is Remy and 2 other people who happen to be vampires trying to figure out like what's going on and stuff. And it also, not only is it like a mystery, which made this book really interesting to me, but it also has a druple, a polyamorous couple. And I actually, okay, so up to this point, I had yet to really read any like stories, any books that contain like a druple. Like, don't get me wrong, I've read like some stuff, but not something that was like explicitly like, oh, 3 people together, 1 relationship. And so like reading this book, I actually liked how they went about it, because they were like, from the get-go, okay, so it was 2 characters. One character's name was, one was Shao Dun Song, and the other was Zaidan Malik. And so when, early in the story, Remy and Shao Dun meet, right? And there's instant, like sparks, instant whatever. And so it's made very clear from the get-go when Remy is like flirting with Shao Dun and stuff, she's like, hey yo, me and my partner, we come in a set. You want me, you're gonna have to have him. And I was like, oh, I really like that, because they're making it very like clear, like this is not gonna be a love triangle. This is either all of us or none of us together. Or all of us, you either get us both or you don't get us at all. I kind of like that. But I'm like trying to figure out how much I want to say without like spoiling it. Genuinely, this book was really good. I gave it I usually give it like a star rating, my books that I read. I gave this book, when I read it or finished reading it, a 4.7. It would have been a 5-star book for me, but my one complaint is that, okay, as I said before, Remy is ostracized in this society. People actually believe that he is like a half vampire because his mother was murdered by a vampire when he was still like in the womb. And so they believe like, oh, what if he's like a vampire? What if he's like a halfling and stuff? He's not. Or at least it wasn't confirmed in this first book. And so he's like been ostracized all the time, been treated horribly by the society, been given like the worst missions to give someone like this early on in their like hunting career. He's basically been through thick and thin for the society. And so when you start off the book, Remy is kind of at like the disposal of both the society and his father, being commanded to do things, told, whatever, whatnot. But at the end of the story, I kind of felt that he was in like the same position. Like a lot of things happened, a lot of things changed and stuff, right? But he was still in that position of being, one, ostracized, and two, being like commanded to do whatever and stuff. The only difference is that he found the love of his life, the loves, plural, of his life. But even then, things were like not super great between all of them because of what went down during this book. Genuinely, this book was really good though. That's like the only like complaint I have. Another complaint though, or not a complaint, but another thing to note is that because Remy was very young when he entered the hunting society, he had a lot of adults around him taking advantage. And that's something that like, because he's only 23 in this book. I'm turning 21. He's going through all this and he's only like 2 years older than me. Yeah, he's only 23 in this book. And so there's this one character near the beginning that he's actually sleeping with who takes advantage. Like it's implied, basically said that he's been like with her since he was very young. And this woman is like, I can't remember how much older she was because I read this back in February last year. I probably should have made notes. Half of these books, it's just pure memory alone. But it was like she took advantage of him, and that was something that they noted in the book, which I like the fact that they actually like talked about Remy's mistreatment. Like they didn't just gloss over like, oh, he's been treated badly. They like, oh, you've been treated really badly. We don't want to treat you that way. And that's what Xiaodun and Zidon were saying to him, which is something that I really liked. Cause like, it's one thing to have like a story where you have a lot of stuff going on, you just don't address it. And it's another thing to like kind of slowly address it while also like focusing on the mystery. This book, genuinely, I would recommend. There is also a second book that takes place after this one. I haven't read it. I saw the reviews on it and people were like, this book compared to the first is so bad, which has me nervous. And that's why I have yet to even like think about buying the book. But yeah, let's talk about the next book because we're already 10 minutes. Well, I'm already like 10 minutes into recording this and we still have 16 books to go. But okay, the next book that I read after it, because this is like a gothic book. Yeah, we're going back because this book had like a little bit of body horror. It was very serious at some point. It was just like, oh, I decided to go for something a bit lighter and I decided to reread People We Meet on Vacation. I read this book maybe like 2-ish years before reading this in 2025. And I actually really liked it, but I was like thinking about it. I was like, man, like I remember some points of the story, but I don't remember everything, so I want to reread it. So I did. I reread it. I would give this book, okay, star-wise, I think I would give it maybe like a 4 out of 5. Is it a perfect story? No. Does it need to be perfect? Also no. But would I give it a 5-star? No. I like this book. I like the romance. I like the yearning. I did get a little bit sick of the flashbacks, because like the flashbacks are supposed to explain like what happened in Croatia between Alex and Poppy. You figure it out. It's really easy to figure out what happened like early on, and so it kind of felt like, ugh. But I did get a little bit exhausted with the flashbacks, but I actually kind of liked it as well. The reason why I liked it is because it explained their relationship, their yearning that they feel for each other, and all that stuff, which is something that I really like. Okay, later down the line, I'm gonna get a book that I'm gonna just start really complaining about. It's romance. So I just want to explain early on, I really like it when a book doesn't immediately have the two main characters in love with each other. I like it when like, or if they're gonna start off a story in love with each other, I like having like the time spent explaining like how they got to that point. And this book I think does a really good job of explaining how they got to that point, because I hate it when a story instantly has the characters in love with each other or into each other. I'm just like, well, you just took all the sauce away. Like, where's that building of feelings and of emotions for each other? It's gone. But honestly, I don't have much to say about this book. This book, is it good? Yes. Do I like the yearning? Yes. Do I like the relationship? Also, yes. As far as like romances go, this one was pretty good. The first time I read this book, when I like first got it, I read it in like 24 hours, which is crazy because I never read a book in 24 hours. It usually takes me like a couple of days if I'm reading really fast. I flew through this book, which is one of the reasons why I actually decided to reread it, because I was like, okay, obviously there's something in this book that had me like reading it front to back in this fastest time I've ever read something. So I reread it, and I think the first time I read it, I actually gave it like maybe a 3.5. So I liked this book better reading it the second time around. But yeah, this book, yeah, 4 out of 5. It was really good. I watched this review of this book once where people were talking for this. I wish I remember like the YouTuber so I could like put the link, because they were talking about like every single Emily Henry book that she has read, and she's like read most of them, and she was talking about like this book in particular, and she's like, oh, I feel like there's like a big differences between like Poppy and Alex, and like there's this one scene where Poppy was like thinking about how Alex always keeps cash on him, and she asks him like, oh, why do you always keep cash on you? And he explains it, but she just tunes it out. And like the person that was talking about it was like, oh, that shows like, that had me questioning like, oh, do you guys even like each other? And like I heard her review and I was like, yeah, I could see like why, but this book very much so was an opposites attract type of story. Like, of course you're gonna have like fun, crazy, like type B version versus the more serious, more calm type A character. I feel like their pairing kind of made sense once you like look at the entire scope of their relationship. Like, they've been friends for like a decade. Of course there's gonna be like moments where like their differences shine, but obviously they end up together because despite their differences, they do still love each other. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, pretty good. Now, as you can see, we have a lot of semantic error. I'm gonna include these 4 volumes all together in one review, because to talk about every single volume individually, there's a lot to talk about, but also, okay. Money spread, bro. This truly does feel like a money spread because each book individually was like 24 bucks. 94 for all of them. But money spread, bro. I really like this series. But here, let me show you the covers individually. So we have this one. It has Sungju and Youngjae in the background. I feel like that kind of like represents like, oh, they're not that close just yet. So we have this one that has Youngjae and then Sungju in the bathroom. And oh wait, Sangwoo. And it's got his name so wrong. What? But like I really like the difference where it's like the same type of like cover, but it switches who's in the background and who's in the foreground. Then for volume 3, it is them together because the relationship is starting to like kind of blossom a little bit. And then they have this dude, and look at the shading. As an artist, I really like these covers, but overall, what would I give this dude? I find it really hard to like give a star rating to like more graphic novel type stories. But if I had to give a rating, I would probably say 4.5. Yep. No, let's go higher. 4.7. This genuinely is a really good BL series. The first 2 volumes are very funny to me. Like I remember, because here's the thing, I read it online, like on an official site like forever ago, but I never actually finished it. So I was like, oh, I'll finish the series like as the volumes are coming out. So like literally volume 4 actually got into stuff that I hadn't read yet. But like I find the series, like the first 2 volumes are very funny, and then the last 2 that are available out there actually get into more explicit stuff. If you look at the cover, look, you can't really see it, but there's a explicit content warning. Things get really explicit. So like if you're someone that's looking for like a good BL series, I would recommend it, but you need to be 18 and you have to be comfortable with nudity, because bro, there is some nudity. I was kind of flabbergasted. I was like, oh but like genuinely, honestly, it is a pretty good series. I've read a handful of BL, not a whole lot, but a handful, enough to like say and give my opinion. There's a lot of BL out there where the relationship is very toxic and consent is out the window. There's so much SA, there's so much non-consent in some BLs, and so to read this was kind of like very much so a breath of fresh air, because is there a little bit of toxicity? There's a teeny bit, but that's mostly comes from the miscommunication between the 2 characters. Like, okay, at the beginning of their relationship, like they want to go like the full way, you know, but, and so let me see his name once again so I do not mispronounce it. Sang-woo. I don't know where I got the other name from. Sang-woo does a bunch of research looking at some videos online, right? And he comes to the conclusion like, oh, I don't want to do all of that. That looks very painful. That looks not so nice. Oh my God. And so he cancels his plans on like them fulfilling the relationship and their needs together. And Young Jae is very mad about that. And so that's when things do get a little bit like, ooh, toxic, a little dubious. But nothing actually happens. And once Young Jae takes a step back and like thinks about what's going on, they talk and things are like resolved for now, which I found very like relieving and stuff. Like, yes, do things get a little bit but it's not nearly as bad as some of the other stuff I have seen / read. And so would I recommend this series? Absolutely. I find it very enjoyable. I like how the relationship blooms, how there's a genuine attraction between the both of them. I like how like their feelings are slowly building. I like the fact that Sang-woo is very neurodivergent, but the story doesn't like feature it in a way that like seems like it's like demonizing it. It's more of just like an extra like little challenge towards the relationship, I guess. As far as BL stories, would I recommend this? Yes. It's funny, the art is good, the relationship is very nice, and Young Jae is hot. Okay, let's get into the next. We're 20 minutes into recording. Wow, I'm making good time. So the next book that I read was this, Dungeons and Drama. Essentially, I went to Barnes & Nobles and I was looking around for something to read with my friend, and this caught both of our eyes, and my friend was like, oh, you should read this because it has Dungeons and Dragons and it's a romance, 2 things you like. And I was like, ooh, maybe. And so basically, this book is about the main character, Riley Morris. She is a child of divorced parents. That's important. Basically, she gets in trouble with her parents because when her mom was like out of town somewhere, she decided to take her mom's car and drive all the way into the city without a driver's license, mind you, to see this one play. I think it was like Hamilton or something. She was like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have to see this play. So she drives literally like perfectly. And the only reason she even got like in trouble is because they got home a little bit too late before her mom. It was her and her friend that went. So they got home a little bit too late before her mom came back. And so her mom was like, you're in so much trouble, young lady. And as a punishment, her mom makes her work like every day as like a part-time job at her dad's like store. And her dad's store is like a D&D like board game type shop that sells like Magic the Gathering cards and a bunch of stuff. And so when you start off this story, Riley's like, oh, I don't really understand the appeal to this stuff. Like, oh, I don't get it. Like, and she like feels a teeny tiny bit bitter about it because she was like, this is what like my dad left me and my mom for, this. And so, okay, essentially how these 2 characters meet is they go to the same school, obviously, because this thing takes place in like a random town in Ohio. And they get into a fake relationship because Riley is trying to avoid her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, who keeps like messing with her and all that stuff. And she's like, oh, no, I've moved on. I'm actually in a relationship. And literally just points to this dude. That scene where it happens where she's like, oh no, I've moved on. I'm actually in a relationship, and approaches Nathan. That's what his name is. I cringed. I was like, girl, what are you doing? But basically, after that entire scene, Riley gets Nathan to like agree to be in a fake relationship because she sees some chemistry going on between him and another girl that came into the shop and all that stuff. So Riley actually ends up joining Nathan's D&D group, and she starts to see the appeal. And one of the things that I actually really liked about this story was that connection that she like formed with her father, Drew working at the shop and Drew the D&D. Like, yes, this was a romance, and yes, the feeling slowly built due to her fake dating ploy. I actually like really liked the fact that Riley was like, Riley like grew closer to her father as the book went on. This book, honestly, in my opinion, was really good. I wouldn't give it like a full 5 stars. I think I give it like maybe a 4.5. Because, no, maybe a full 5. Because there's this one I actually really liked. Okay, I'm like getting off track. I wish I wrote down like stuff, but by the time I read this book, I actually knew that I liked the fake dating trope, but this really solidified it within me because there's like a couple of scenes where like Riley was like, oh no, why is my heart like beating? And then there was this one scene where like Nathan and Riley were talking about going to prom together. And so Nathan was like, are you gonna wear your hair up or down? And Riley was like, why? And he was like, oh, I like your hair down. I think it looks nice that way. And she's like, oh, then to spite you, I'm gonna wear it up. And he was like playing with her hair, like gathers it up into like a little ponytail before releasing it. And he was like, that's fine. I like everything you do to me. That had me like, ooh, that like stayed in my heart. I was like, dang. Like, this is supposed to be for like younger people, and yet there's a little bit of sauce in here. Like, you like wow. I was like, dang. And so yeah, I I think this was a really good story. I liked the ending of it because another thing that Riley was trying to do, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And this book wasn't like more than like, it was almost 300 pages, but not quite. It fell just a bit under. But another thing that Riley was trying to do was like put together this play, because the funding for like what's the word, for like the arts got cut, and so the play that they usually put on was cut out of the budget. And so Riley like tried to put together this whole thing and stuff, but at one point her father has like an emergency and ends up in the hospital. So Riley actually ends up missing like the performance that they put on to like raise the money and like convince the school to like not cut the arts. And so Nathan, as like a show of like, hey, Nathan and like the others from the D&D group, oh my god, my brain, bro, they're like, yeah, we're gonna do it anyways, and literally they'll put on the whole show, and Riley ends up like catching like the latter half of it, and she's just like super impressed by it, and it was like such a nice scene. This genuinely was a pretty good one. I would recommend. Now we're gonna talk about the next book. The next book is another Dungeons and Dragons dating thing. It's called Dating and Dragons, which this one is Dungeons and Drama. It's by the same author, as you can tell. I didn't like this one, honestly. I didn't like this one, and I feel bad, but I cannot lie. I will not lie, okay? This to me was like maybe a 2.5 out of 5 stars if I'm being generous with my points. And I think I thought a lot about like, what was it compared to this one, the other book that I previously read that I did not like. Like, these books have very similar, like, not very similar, but these books both contain like romance and Dungeons and Drama. So like, what was it? And they both take place in Ohio. So I was like, what was it about this book that I didn't like in comparison to the other? And I figured it out. I know it. The thing that I did not like about this book was how fast the two characters like fell in love with each other. Like, okay, basically the whole premise of this book is that Quinn, this girl, she moves to a new town with her family. They move basically for 2 reasons. One, to be closer to her grandma, who's like getting a bit up there in age. And 2, because Quinn had like a falling out with her friend group at her like old town, essentially. Like, they saw how miserable Quinn was, and so that was one of the reasons why they decided to move. And so, okay, this character, his name is Logan. On the first day of school that Quinn has at this new school, her grandma's like, oh, let me get a picture of you at your first new day in town here. And then she asks Logan, this dude, who just happens to be walking by, to take a picture of them together. And Logan's like, okay. And that's when instantly sparks fly between Quinn and Logan. And that's when my first, like little issue with the book arises. I think that these two main characters fell for each other a little bit too fast, which made the rest of the book just like, eh. So essentially, when it comes to romances, I like a romance that like, maybe, I wouldn't say quite a slow burn, but I do like something that like kind of builds as the story goes on. And so if you have two characters that like each other from first meeting, have full intentions of like asking each other out, then it kind of like kills the whole romance for me. Cause like, I don't know, I like seeing feelings build, and that's what I got in this book. The feelings between Riley and Nathan, you get to see build throughout the story. And so when they finally like get to that one point where their feelings were just like so much, it's just like, oh my god. Like when they finally got to that point where Nathan was like, oh, I like anything you do to me, and Riley instantly like kind of panicked. This is like, oh my god. That's why I was like, oh, But because they already instantly like each other upon meeting, it's just like, eh. And so the whole reason why they don't get together literally upon like the first couple of chapters is because Quinn joins their D&D, Logan's D&D group. Because they stream it online, they have one rule, which is, hey, no dating in the group. And so Quinn already had like kind of some experience with her last D&D group in which like relationships like messed up the group, and that's why she had a falling out with everybody. So she's like, oh, I don't want to mess up my chances here, so I just don't want to even like entertain the idea of being with Logan and stuff anymore. I feel like that would have been fun if she had already like, if the story had started off with her just being like, oh, I just think he's kind of cute, but since that rule is there, I'm not even going to think of him that way. But because she already has feelings for him, it's just kind of like, like if there had been instances in which their feelings had like, oh my god, what's the word? If that their feelings had like been like casually built up, I would have been like, okay, whatever. But because this story like started off with them already liking each other, I was just like, eh. And so they literally like went through like no, we can't be together. It's against the rules. It's forbidden and all that stuff. But literally, not to spoil the story, but I'm gonna spoil it anyways. Literally, once they actually revealed their relationship and their feelings for each other to the rest of the group was just like, eh, whatever. Like all of that, like internal fighting, all of that, no, we can't be together, only for the group to be like, eh, it's fine. I was just like, oh, okay. The reason why I wouldn't rate this book lower is because there were some genuinely good scenes between Quinn and Logan that had me like, oh, that was kind of cute. And I also liked Quinn's grandma, who was just like a little B plot, like silly story going on with her. And so if you're looking for something that's easy and fun to read, I would recommend this book. But if you want something that's a bit more serious about building the relationship and the romance, I can't 100% in good faith recommend this. Because, like, it's just a fun read, but it's not like anything. It doesn't fulfill the romantic needs in my soul. Okay, next book. The next book, I was kind of on a romance kick, honestly, but the next book is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Basically, what happens in this book is Daphne is engaged to a character named Peter. Peter goes on a bachelor trip with his friends and his childhood best friend, Petra, during which Petra confesses her love to Peter, and she's like, don't get married and stuff. So Peter comes back and he's like, I can't get married to you. Petra just like expressed her love to me, blah, 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 blah. And Daphne's very angry, so she moves out, and she actually ends up moving in to the apartment with Petra's ex-boyfriend, who also got dumped when Petra confessed her love to Peter, Miles. And so I actually really liked this story. Mainly, the romance was pretty good, but I also really liked the other aspect of the story, which was building community. Basically, Daphne was in like a city where she did not have any of her family there. She did not have like many friends and stuff, and so she realistically had no reason to stay. So like no reason to like remain there. She had all the reasons to go back home to live with her mom, and she was actually like actively considering it. She was really just waiting for a position at the library in like where her mom lives to open up. But then she starts spending time with Miles, and Miles is like showing her like the sights and stuff, and showing her the appeal of the like city that they're in outside of just being with Peter. Because like she even lost like a bunch of friends and stuff upon like leaving the relationship that she was in with Peter. And so I actually found myself really liking this story because like I feel like making community is very important outside of just like being with your partner. And I feel like some romances kind of are like, not even just romances, but shows in general kind of like gloss over how important community and friendship is. And so just having a whole story kind of is based off of that, while also having a relationship between these two characters build, it was pretty nice actually. I would give this story 4.3. Will I explain my star rating? No. This is based off of my feelings. Like, once again, was it like a perfect romance? No. But I feel like when it comes to Emily Henry's stories, life isn't perfect, so you should not expect like a perfect love story. Like, obviously this is like fiction, so it's gonna get close to perfect, but it's not gonna be like there, like where you're just like, oh, that was the most perfect thing ever. Nothing's ever perfect, you know. But yeah, what's another thing that I really like? I want to like talk a bit more, but I'm trying to think. Oh, I actually did genuinely like Miles as a love interest. I don't know if I've talked much. I haven't really talked much about the love interests in these romances, but Miles was a pretty decent character, because like when you like see how Peter, who was very jealous of Miles, obviously, when you see how Peter was like describing Miles and like how Daphne's impression of Miles changes, you think like, oh, Miles is horrible, or doesn't sound like a very great boyfriend. And then once you actually like get to know Miles throughout the story, it's like, oh, he's pretty chill, a pretty good character. Like, yes, does he smoke weed inside? Yeah, but is he also a good person that was willing to show Daphne the appeals of the city? Also, yes. Next story. This was actually another BL manga. This was a manga, not a manga. It is The Metalhead Next Door. Boop, boop. I didn't really like it that much. And I feel bad, but I didn't really like it that much. I feel like going for reading like stories that have like multiple volumes to expand upon a relationship, and books that like the entire book is dedicated to a relationship, to like this, which is just a little quick one shot, made it so I felt that the story went by just a little bit too quick without really like taking the time to show like why these two characters like each other. Like, what is it about them that like have them drawn to each other? Like, literally, okay, the two characters, they meet on a snowy day when this dude accidentally passes out outside because it was so cold, and he's just like, ah. And so he ends up finding him and like brings him inside and like feeds him like food, like warm food to warm him up, and like gathers him up in a blanket. And so then a literal time skip happens where a year passes, and he's like, oh, it's been a year since he's like started feeding me every single day. And I was like, an entire year? Like, you skip past like the best part of like the relationship building time frame. Like, if I were the artist of this, personally, I think that I would have at least shown like a little montage of them spending like the year together, like eating every single day with each other. Like maybe like a spring, summer, fall, winter, to show like, oh, they're spending so much time together. Because like, I feel like that, a little thing like that would have like explained like, oh, this is why they probably have these feelings for each other. But instead, it just has a scene where they like go to a concert together, which I actually did like that. But then this dude, while he is asleep, kisses him. And I was just like, we're still doing this? I don't know what year this came out, but we're still doing this? Brother, ooh. That actually happens to Semantic Error too. But the thing was, in that scene, Jaeyoung was pretending to be asleep. And so, Sangwoo, is that his name? Why do I keep forgetting it? But black hair dude comes over and kisses him. And so then he leaves, and then Jaeyoung just wakes up like, it was very funny. This wasn't though, because it wasn't like a comedic thing where you could be like, my mom just texted me in all caps, I need rubber bands. Ah! I guess I'll be right back, y'all. I delivered what my mom asked for, but I legitimately forgot what I was talking about. All I'm saying is, this book did not hit as hard as I thought it would, which was very unfortunate. Though I will say, I did like the little like background story of this guy. I can't remember the name, but he was like, oh, I originally got into metal because like I had trouble finding my voice, and it was like very it was like convenient to have a metalhead like look, because people don't really like mess with you if you have that like girl look to you. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cute and like kind of nice, because I actually have, sorry, oh my god, I'm not even tired. I don't know why I'm yawning. I've had like trouble in the past like finding my voice to speak. I'm a very anxious person, like socially, and so it was actually nice to see a character who also like had trouble like speaking up and stuff. And so to have a scene where he's like, I actually do like you, to main blonde dude, it was nice. But that doesn't get rid of the fact that blonde dude kissed him while he was asleep. Like, what was that? He was like, man, I am a bad person. Like, yeah, I don't know. To me, consent is a very, like, important thing. And so to have, like, even just a little moment where it's, like, disregarded has me, like, ooh. And I know that happened in Semantic Error, but I just like Semantic Error better. I'm biased, so what can I say? What can I say? Oh, yeah. I don't know if I set my rating. I would give it, like, a 3 out of 5, because it's not horrible. But it's, like, it's something that left me more neutral than not. Like, something that left me just like, whatever. Like, would I reread it? Yeah. But am I gonna be like, oh, this is amazing? No. Next story, and it's another manga, is 10 Things I Want to Do Before I Turn 40. Yes, this is another BL. Can you see the trend here? I actually like this one in comparison to Metalhead Next Door. I like the fact I like the age gap actually. I also like the fact that blonde dude up here, I'd never remember names. Blonde dude up here is like, was the one that approached him. And like the fact that you find out later on in the story that the reason why he even agreed to help him like complete his list of things he wanted to do before he turned 40 was because he actually liked him and was looking for a way in, and used the list as an opportunity. Slay. And the fact that a lot of the anxiety that the black-haired dude had in their relationship really only came from their age difference, and the fact that once the blonde-haired dude like was like, oh no, it's fine by me, that things were like pretty good. Slay. I will say, if you're like someone that's looking for a BL, oh my god, if you're someone that's looking for like a BL to read, if you want to read this, you need to be comfortable with nudity. That's all I'm telling you. I'm pretty sure this was wrapped when I bought it. Anything wrapped that you get from a bookstore, just know. But honestly, I did like this. Like, yes, was it short? Yeah. But like, I feel like the author really used like the length of the story like wisely. Like, they like spent what's the word? They spent enough time showing the gradual build of this guy's like feelings and stuff, and like showed them spending time together in a way that felt like, oh, it makes sense that now they're in a relationship. And so I actually ended up liking this story a lot. And my rating. 4 out of 5. I find it very hard to give something a 5-star review because it's like, you have to really touch my heart. And even though I like this, did it touch my heart? Did it caress it with its bookish page hands? And no, nothing really does. You have to be a great. I have to like stop at the end of the story to give it a 5-star review. I actually did give one of the books on this list a 5-star review, and you shall see. The next book, I actually want to give a little bit of history because this author is an author that I've been following since I was in middle school. Essentially, back in middle school, I was on Wattpad as chronically online middle schoolers might be. And even though I read a lot of fan fiction, but I wasn't like the biggest into fan fiction on Wattpad. I actually read a lot of original stories. I think it was a little bit equal between original and fan fiction. And so one day I was like really into reading superhero original stories where like a person will have powers and they're like, oh, powers. And so I ended up stumbling onto a story called Not So Superhero by this author, Twomey. And ever since then, I've been reading their books. I actually really like their stories. I've read so many of their stories. I remember like looking at like all of the stories that they had like published, or just most of the stories that they had like online. I'm like, read that. Got like halfway through that one. Like I've read so many of them. Also, Tony, if you do happen to be watching this, I don't know if you would be, but if you do happen to be watching this, please republish. Please, let me look into the camera directly. Please put out He Who Will Be King. I want to read that story again so badly. You had me gagged on the bus to school. I remember literally reading He Who Will Be King by Twomey and like tearing up at like a very emotional scene on the bus. On the way home. I was like, oh my god, like trying not to actually start crying. So that's like a little bit of history. And now we get to Bare Your Teeth, which is like one of Twomey's like latest stories. Like there's also a second book to Bare Your Teeth, but I have not read that one yet. It's literally sitting right here. Not this one, but this one. And so I shall say, this book was actually really good. Because the two main characters are Nicholas and William. And so the prologue starts off kind of explaining William's history. And essentially William is the third son of like this like noble family. He like lives a very happy life. He's like very much so into reading, very much so like a very gentle and loving kid who grew up in a gentle and loving family. But then the war goes on and like the king requests that someone is sent, and the request that he makes is for William to be sent. And so his family's very upset. They're like, no, not our son. No, not William. For like good reason. And then literally William goes off and like any of that like innocence, any of that love that he had in his heart, it's kind of dimmed because 5 years later, because he sent when he's like 16, 5 years later, he's been at the war for 5 years and he's like jaded. Like he's thinking of literally the first scene that he's in with Nicholas, he's literally thinking of shooting Nicholas, which had me like, man, that's kind of funny. I actually really liked William's like side of the story because each chapter switches between Nicholas's point of view and William's. I actually really liked William's point of view because like a lot of his like narrative and a lot of his story just had him like being like, oh, would my family even accept me anymore if they saw like the person I became? Like I've changed so much in the 5 years it's been. Like would my family am I even the same like person I was like when I left? Will my family recognize who I am? And I have it like, that's really interesting. Nicholas, on the other hand, Nicholas is an asshole. I'm just gonna straight up say it. But it's very funny because like when I came into this, I was like, when I read like the first like interaction between William and Nicholas, I was like, oh, Nicholas is like the worst. He's like horrible and stuff. But then like you start reading and like learning more and more about the Fae, which that is what Nicholas is. He's a Fae. And you start to realize like, oh, he's a product of literally his environment and what he is. Essentially, like literally everything that you hear about like Nicholas, I'm just like, oh, he's been like Drew the Ringer. Of course he's gonna be like a little bit of an asshole. And like it was really an interesting like dot exercise because like I was treating Nicholas how one would a normal human person, and that's how I was judging him. But the more and more you read in the early chapters about the Fae, the more and more you realize like, oh, this dude is not like a human, and like would it be fair to judge him in human standards, to call him like an asshole for like doing asshole-ish things when literally according to everything that's been said, that's just normal like actions and like things that you would do in the Fae realm. It's like kind of interesting to think about that stuff, but let me say, the relationship between Nicholas and William was actually really interesting. And there's this, okay, basically they get the whole thing that kind of like solidifies their like relationship, they get dragged out of like this like base camp that they had because they were like traveling into this like realm and there's like monsters and stuff, so they both get dragged out of this camp. Nicholas almost died. William saves his life. William actually considers killing Nicholas for a moment, but it's like, oh, he doesn't do it because he ends up getting found, and so he's like, oh, okay, puts his gun away. But literally like before they like sleep together for the first time, because that's what happens, that's what like starts off their little fling. Nicholas is just like, oh, don't you want to relax? Oh, don't you want to like just chill for a bit? And William's like, not with you. And like it's so funny like how persistent Nicholas is, because at first he's just like, before they even get to this point, their first interaction was them like arguing and stuff and like ready to kill each other, and Nicholas is like, I'm gonna ruin his life, I'm gonna fillet him and all that stuff. But obviously I haven't explained this yet, but there's like this agreement between the Fae and humans where Faes, as long as this war is going on, the Fae cannot hurt or harm any humans. Now they can do things indirectly, but they can't like directly make a move against humans. And so Nicholas was like, I'm gonna just find a way to like mess with him and all that stuff. And so then that I'm gonna find a way to mess with him becomes like him like really becoming more interested in William, like what is it about him and all that stuff. And so finally we get to the crux of that, where Nicholas is like, oh please, let's just like have some fun, please, I'll get down on my knees and beg right now. You know what William says in response, bro? William's like, okay, then beg. Nicholas instantly gets down on his knees, pow, starts begging, please, please. And then that's what leads to them, you know, getting together for the first time. I remember reading that scene when William said, then beg, I gasped out loud. Tony, you have done it again. I took such a long break from reading your stuff, but then once I saw you were like publishing more stuff and I bought this book, I don't know what I was expecting, but to gasp out loud, like, damn. Then beg, damn. So yeah, if you're looking for a romance that's like a bit more in the dark section, has a bit more like vitriol before turning into something, and has like a kind of interesting world, I would recommend this story. My one little issue with this, and this is like a small issue, is that I feel like Tony could have benefited from having an editor or just like a beta reader, because there were some like instances where I would like read something and I was like, oh, that sentence is structured weirdly, or oh, like it would have made more sense like that, like worded like that instead of how it was in the story. But that's just like a very small, very little issues to have in comparison to like my opinion of the entire story as a whole. Okay, so we're gonna get into the next book. We only have only 4 more. Yay! This video has been going on for so long. Okay. The next book, and this is, I'm just gonna say before I even introduce this book, I didn't like it. I did not like it. I would give it maybe like a 2 out of 5 stars. Wait, did I say my rating for this book? I don't think I did. This is like a 4.5 for me. No, I will not explain my rating, but this is like a 2 out of 5 star, maybe even less. Depends on when you catch me. When you catch me on a particular hateful day, less than 2 stars. When you catch me on a forgiving day, just a bit higher than 2 stars. This next book is Don't Let the Forest End by C.G. Drews. So, the reason why this book caught my eye to begin with is because I was at a point after reading Barrier Teeth where I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to read next. Like, I had a list and stuff, but I wanted something more fresh, something that I had not like heard of. Literally, I looked up books like Silver Under Nightfall, which was the first book on my list, obviously. And I was like, man, I really want something that has like that same essence, something that's very similar. And this was one of the books that popped up. And so I read the like synopsis, which was basically Andrew finds out that his big fat crush Thomas was fighting monsters in the wood at night. And so I was like, oh, that sounds very interesting. First of all, this is a horror, but I don't know, I'm not like super duper into horror. Like, if a book has horror concepts on top of like whatever else is going on, I'm like, fine, okay, cool. I don't like directly look for horrors. This book was like my first like actual like for real dip into reading something that was like directly horror alongside like other things. And okay, the reason why I would not rate this book like I would not give this book a 0 is because there's like illustrations in the book to show like some of the horror-ish stuff that's going on, which I actually like enjoyed seeing, because it's like one thing to be like, oh, it looked like this, and another thing to have a direct illustration showing it. I would read this at night and be like, oh, that's scary. But the thing was, the main character, Andrew, I just did not like him all that much, because his whole POV was just very depressing to read. I remember texting my friend about this book early on. I was like, oh, this feels less like a horror and more like just a story featuring a depressed and delusional character. And I know that some horrors will feature depressed and delusional, but because we were trapped in his POV, I was just tired of him. I was just like, oh my god. Another thing about this book, though, that bothered me a little bit, and it's one of my reasons why I will not be reading more of this author's story, because they came out with another book that had kind of a similar like, oh, woods is coming to attack kind of vibe to it. And even though I was like, oh, I might read it, I decided not to, because I found this author's prose to be exhausting to read. take a shot every time the author mentions ribs in the story and you will die of alcoholism before you even get 50%, Judas. I get it. I get that roses have thorns or whatever. I get that Andrew wanted to physically be in Thomas's skin. I get that they wanted to rip their ribs out and place each other inside of each other. I get it. You don't have to say it 50 times. I swear to God. Like, that's like one of my biggest issues. Like, I get it. This is like, okay. Before I got into reading this story, I did look up some reviews. I didn't like read too hard on it, but I was just like, okay, what are people's like opinions? Because I don't want to jump into something, especially since I never read any of the books by this author before. Right? So I like saw one like big video of this person dissecting it. I didn't watch the entire video, but I did read some of the comments on the comment section, and a person was like, oh, a lot of like the passages and a lot of the statistics and everything that was going on in the story just kind of felt like very Tumblr-esque. And I was like, oh, very like Tumblr, very fan fiction-esque. And I was like, oh, what's wrong with that? Like, I've read plenty of fan fiction that have been written amazingly. Like, I don't see really what's the issue with having something that like is worded a certain way like that. Then I read the book and I was like, oh, I get it. It is very exhausting to read. Like, literally, I bet I could open this story up to this random page and just be like, brother, a shudder barreled down Andrew's spine and his body twitched. Okay, that's not that bad. It got like exhausting to read at some point. And also, you want to know what's really funny? This is a big spoiler for the story, so if you don't want to get spoiled, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Or no. If you don't want to get spoiled, like skip ahead a little bit. That's what I meant to say. But Andrew has a sister named Dove. Dove is dead. That Dove do not eat. What is this? What is this? I can tell you were at fan fiction. You were probably on AO3 and 10 years ago. You were probably on, not even 10 years ago. You were probably on AO3 in 2010. That Dove do not eat. His sister's name is Dove, and she's dead. Brother. Anyways, actually, one thing that I do like about this story, or one thing that keeps me thinking about this story, is the fact that I cannot tell if the monsters featured in the story were real or not. Because like, it's one thing to have only Andrew see the story. It's one thing to have only Andrew see the monsters and be like, okay, they're not real because this dude is depressed and delusional. But also the other character, Thomas, was seeing the monsters, and he was seeing the monsters before Andrew even knew about the monsters. And so it's a question, are they both just insane in the membrane, or are the monsters real? And that's something that bothers me. I don't know. I'm like arguing with myself. There's two wolves in my head. The one that believes the monsters were real, and the one that believes that the monsters weren't real, but just two depressed and delusional kids' manifestations of bad things as a way to avoid having to really deal with the fact that they were the ones that did those bad things. I fully believe that Thomas probably killed his parents. Thomas was like, oh no, I didn't kill him, the monsters did. Like, okay, I totally believe that. But then there's like instances in a story that happened where it's just like, are the monsters actually real? I can't tell. That's the one reason why I can't fully give this story a 0-star rating. Because there's like a lot of potential in it. It's just that the results, like the character and the way it was written, just make it so like I can't fully give it like, it's like I can't fully rate it like the way I would have had the story just like hit a bit harder for me. That's why I'm kind of curious about like the next up next books that CG Drew has, because like I feel like this author does have a lot of potential of writing a story that will hit. It's just that this book did not hit for me. The highest compliment that I can give to this book, and like if you're a Hoyser fan, you will know, is that the ending of this book kind of reminded me of the song In a Week. Another spoiler alert. Basically, Andrew carves out Thomas's heart and then gives him a piece of his own heart. And so it's just kind of giving In a Week, like, they'll find us in a week when the weather, like, I fully believe, regardless of if the monsters are true or not, that ending is giving murder-suicide. Andrew's crazy ass murdered Thomas, and now he's about to die as well. This book will stay on my brain. Honestly, that's why, I recently donated like a book or two to Goodwill because I'm trying to like declutter a bit because I am moving out soon. Your girl's going to university, what? And so the reason why I'm like determined to keep this book is because even though I did not like the story and I found the prose to be exhausting, I cannot find myself parting with the story for the reason that it has stirred emotions in me. Are they good emotions? Not quite, but are they emotions nonetheless? Yes. This has left me like thinking, like this was really like had me doing like thought exercises, like what is it about this book that I do not like? Like why am I like hating so hard? And it was actually fun to like think about it because like, yeah, I do want to read good books, but I also want to figure out what it is about a bad book that makes it bad to me, you know? Not that I would say that this book is like bad, it just wasn't good to me. Like I've seen plenty of reviews where people are like, oh my god, this book was so great. And I'm just sitting here like, this book was just okay. This book, well, not even just okay, I just didn't like the book. Another little complaint, this is just me being petty, is that literally at the start of the story, like Andrew was thinking about the little stories that he writes, because he's like a fairy tale like writer and stuff. And his sister was like, oh, you should publish them one day. Or he was thinking about how his sister would say that, like, oh, your stories are so good. But then the story actually like shows little instances of his like stories that he wrote. And I was reading that and I was like, this is what she was calling so good. Like I would not tune in. But that's just me being really petty. A genuine complaint that I do have about this book is, look at this. Can you read that? I couldn't. Literally, I had to put on my glasses and go like this. Because like, imagine being me. You're reading this at night. You only have one lamp turned on and the lamp is very warm. I could hardly, and I would have it like this. I could hardly read that. Like, I feel like there is a better way to like contain the story without having it be black on white, because it's not even in like the proper font. This is like a more handwritten looking font, and so it makes it hard to read. And that's like a very petty complaint. I'm ready to move on. Let's talk about my actual first ever 5-star book. My one and only 5-star book, Babel by R.F. Kuang. Okay, so essentially, I finished reading Don't Let the Forest In. Did not know what I wanted to read next. And I kept hearing so much about how good this book was. So I downloaded a sample of this book and I read like the first couple of pages of chapter 1. And I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And so I decided to read the rest of the book. This book is genuinely so good. I cried at the end of the story. Like I did genuinely cry. That's what I want from my 5 stars. If you're not stirring that emotion in me, I will not give you a 5-star. But my one complaint, and this is like a very small complaint about the story, My one complaint is how small the font is. Like, I remember seeing this one video where this person was talking about how much like words are in a page, and people were like making fun of her because they're like, oh, of course a book is supposed to have a lot of words in a page. But now I get what she meant, because this is even just a little bit, that's like a lot. Like, okay, that's like a lot. And I don't mean it in the sense that it's a lot to read. I don't mind reading a lot. I just mean in the sense that the font is small. It's pequeño. Every time I like geared up to read this book, I would have to put on my glasses. And here's the thing, my eyesight's not bad. Why am I having to put on my glasses? I remember when I first bought this book, I put it in my bag, because I usually put a book in my purse when I'm like out and about, because who knows when I'll have a moment to like who knows when I'll have like a little like lull in a hangout, pull out the book, just read a little bit, read a page or two, you know? And so I was out with my mom and my sister, and I like literally opened the book, and I was like, oh, I can't read that. Like literally I had to like put the book away, which did not feel super great, but it was fine. I ended up actually reading the rest of the book. But okay, let's talk about this book. This book features the main character, Robin Swift. It takes place in the 1800s. It's very interesting because basically it starts off with Robin in his home. He's dying of this disease. His mother is next to him. She's already dead, died by the disease that Robin is currently plagued with. Then comes in Professor, what's his name? Oh yeah, okay, Professor Lavelle. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't care. He's a bastard, Professor Lavelle. He pulls out like this silver like thing, says the words, Robin is healed. And it's just very interesting. Basically, this book is about colonization. It's fantasy, but it doesn't really feel all that fantasy. And it's written very uniquely, because there will be like little like, let me see if I can find a good example. There will be little like asterisk moments, like kind of how it would be in a history book. And so I was like, oh, that's very interesting. But then you actually look at the title and it's an arcane history. So this is like a fantasy history book. And I found it really interesting. I think there's a lot that happens in this book. If you read this book, I will warn you that this book is going to feel very slow. But I actually didn't hate how slow this book was, mainly for the reason that history is slow. There's a lot that happens in history, but sometimes history will slow down, especially when you're focusing on one specific thing, one specific person. So it takes a long time for Robin to come to the conclusion that like, oh, colonization, bad. British white men, kind of bad. Like, I found myself a bit frustrated with how Robin with how Robin like thought about a lot of the things that were going down. But I also found myself very understanding, because essentially, first chapter, Professor Lavelle snatches Robin. First chapter, Professor Lavelle cures Robin of his disease, snatches him up from his home, literally gives him so many opportunities. And so when you have this character that's like been given like an opportunity that he would not have had it not been for Professor Lavelle, it makes so much sense why he's like kind of on the fence of things that are going down in like the society and stuff. Like, it makes so much sense. So it's like kind of hard to talk about this story because like so much happens. It's genuinely something that you're just gonna have to pick up and read for yourself. I think that the saddest thing about this story is the fact that we, the audience, never gets to know Robin's true name. Because literally in the first chapter, Professor Lavelle's like, oh, I'm gonna give you this opportunity. You just need to agree. Do you agree? Robin's like, I guess so. He's only a kid. Of course he's gonna agree. So then, okay. And so then Professor Lavelle was like, okay, then you're gonna need a name. Robin's about to say his like real name, and then Professor's like, oh, not your Chinese name. You need a name that British people will actually say. And so Robin's like, oh, and comes up with Robin Swift based off of some of the books that he's read, right? And it's so sad because that was like one of the first instances where I hated Professor Lavelle, because I feel like a name is very important. You were given that name. That name means something. Like, even if it's just like, oh, I thought that name sounded nice, it was still like a name that was given to you by like your family or whatever. And so to have that stripped away, to have a moment where you're just like, oh, come up with something alternative, because the common white man will not be able to say it. Screw them. No name is ever like unworthy of being learned. I will go out of my way to learn a name. And I know that sounds a little bit hypocritical in the sense that literally beforehand I was mispronouncing names and be like, I can't remember their name. But here's the thing. When I'm actively reading a story and the character has a more like name that I don't know how to pronounce, I literally go out of my way to look up like, oh, how do you pronounce this? Excuse my brain for not remembering like a year later, okay? But all I'm saying is that a name is very important. And I'm saying that because I've had so many instances like growing up where I'll be like, oh, my name is Aaliyah, which is not a hard name to pronounce. And they'll be like, oh, Alea? I got called Elijah one time. Where did you get Elijah from? Where did you get the J from? And it gets so frustrating that sometimes I'll like be like, yeah, whatever. And be like, yeah, I'll be like, yeah, that is I if a person calls me Elia. But like, not anymore. Because my name is my name, and I should not, will not go by anything else. I am Aaliyah, not Elijah, not Elijah. Where did you get that name from? But there was a point in my life where I kind of just gave up. And like, whenever a person would refer to me as Aaliyah, I'm just like, yeah, that's it, whatever. And so it kind of like made me sad, because like, even though I can't 100% like relate, because I still like would never fully change my name, the fact that I was even willing to like compromise and let my name be mispronounced was kind of sad. And so to see a character that was like willing to go by something completely different than what he was born as, that made me really sad. And in fact, spoiler, at the end of the story, basically Robin sees a vision of his mom before he dies. And his mom says his name. But we as an audience never get to know that name before he just dies. I was crying. That made me cry. 5 out of 5 stars. I really struggle to speak about this story. That's all I can really say about it. Now, we only have two more books. Oh my god. Tell me why I paused this video, because I was getting stuffy again. And then my phone decides, it's time in the arms of... Like, bruh. Anyways, the next book that I'm going to talk about is The Second Death of Locke. This is the second to last book that I read. We only have one more after this. 3 out of 5 stars. No, I will talk about it. This book features the main character, Gray Flynn, who is a mage. No, wait. Who is a well. Basically in this... Oh, I just poked myself in the eye. Okay. Basically in this world, in this world, in the continent that the story takes place, in order to use magic, a mage needs something called a well, which is basically a person who contains power, who will literally flow that power into the mage so that they can cast their spells. Gray is a well. She has a mage. Her mage is named Kieran. She's in love with her mage. The world building in this story is genuinely very interesting. And also the magic system is genuinely very interesting, but I will say that I found this story a little bit disappointing because it was, when I like this, not discovered, but when I was recommended this story, it was marketed as a romance fantasy, and it was also marketed as a lady night story. I felt that Grey was less of a knight and more of a healer. Like, yes, could she fight? Yes. Yes, could she wield a sword? Also yes. Did she have armor? Also yes. Did she feel like a traditional knight? Not really. She felt more like a healer. There's multiple detailed scenes where she would heal a person, heal Kieran, for example. But there wasn't many scenes where you got her like in detail fighting. Literally a war happened. A war like happened and Grey was like, wow, I killed him. And then there was nothing else. Like, oh, I sliced down my enemy. Like, I want more details than that. Like, what happened? And I don't know. The thing that disappointed me the most about the story, though, is because literally on the front cover of the book it says gritty, romantic, and breathtaking, and breathlessly fierce. Romantic? No. So you know how earlier I was like, oh, I like to see the characters' feelings for each other build up as the story goes on. This is the final boss of that not happening. You get into the story and Grey is already very much so in love with Kieran, and the only thing that's keeping them from being together is the fact that they just happen to not talk about their feelings for each other. Grey's in love with him. Kieran's in love with her. They've been in love with each other this whole time, and the only reason they haven't solidified their relationship is because they just haven't talked about it. And so, because I as the reader, not we, I don't know if you've read this, but because I was not privy to how those feelings built up, I just found myself disappointed and kind of like about the romance between these two characters, because you get into the story, they already love each other. The flashbacks do nothing to explain why they love each other, how she got to that point. Like, yeah, there is some like instances where it's like, oh, that makes sense, but I would have rather wanted to see like something more solid, like. And so I found myself just kind of a little bit disappointed because it made the sacrifice that Kieran decides to make at the end of the story just not hit as hard, because you don't really see like how their devotion for each other builds up in order to like show that they're willing to make these sacrifices for each other. Like, yes, they've been with each other, they've been childhood best friends for like almost 20 years or whatnot. I would have liked to see how they got to that point though. How did their relationship bloom from childhood friends to something more? Like, how did she find out that she was in love with him? Like, how did she know that her love wasn't just platonic, you know? I would have liked to like see a story that like featured that. So I was like thinking to myself, like, oh, if I were the author of this, or if I were to like rewrite this story, sorry, I'm like posing weird, like, what would I do? And so I was thinking like, oh, instead of like having them already be with each other, in the sense that, not be with each other, but be like assigned to each other as like Mage and Noelle, maybe like have it so Grey and Kieran have like always been like in different paths and stuff. Or I don't know. Like, I thought about this. I was just like disappointed by this story. Like, is this a bad story? No. But then I find myself just being like, yes. And I feel like that's the worst feeling to like be left with, when you just have a story that just leaves you feel like neutral. And I'm kind of disappointed because I feel like the story had so much potential, but she's a healer. She's barely even like a knight. Though, one thing that I will give to the story is I really like how casually queer the world feels in the sense that we have a non-binary character, we have a trans character, both Gray and Karen are bisexual and have like no specific preference towards like gender. That was actually very nice to see, because like I don't know, sometimes like it's so easy to read a book and just assume everybody's like straight, especially if it's a romance between like a woman and a man. And so to have a character, like not a character, but have a book explicitly show like, oh, there is queerness here, and have a book explicitly say like, oh, both these characters are both into both men and women and do not discriminate, that was nice. On the romance just left me like, whatever. Like truly, I just like, whatever. Like it doesn't like, don't let the forest end. This book will stay with me because I will keep lamenting like, there's parts of these stories, part of this story that I liked and part of the story that I hated. But this, there are so many interesting things, but at the end of the day, I was just left with like, whatever. I feel like that's the worst thing for stories to leave me with. Like I would rather like absolutely love or absolutely hate and feel neutral about a story, you know? But maybe that's just me. Now here's the last story. Red Rising! Gekya! Sorry. This book is what I would like to call a technical 5-star, meaning that it was so highly rated for me that I just decided to round it up. I gave this a 4.9. And so I decided to round it up, and this is a 5. If you do not know anything about Red Rising, basically, the main character's name is Darrow. He is a red, which is basically like the lowest you can be like in this like society. He's a miner, specifically a helldiver. Helldivers mine helium-3, and he was living a content, happy life with his wife Io and his family until Io was like, oh, you have to live for more than just your love for me. Like you could be a leader, you could lead our people and stuff. And so Io decides to become a martyr and lets herself be executed by singing the forbidden song. I'm like skipping past like some things. So she's executed. Darrow's very sad. He decides to try and kill himself essentially by burying her, because basically burying like a person in this society is illegal and would get him instant executed. He wakes up after his execution and finds out that his entire life was a lie, because people have inhabited Mars for like so long now. He and his people thought that they were mining Mars to make it habitable. It had been habitable for years now. And so essentially he becomes a gold, infiltrates society, and all that stuff. The reason why I took a single 0.1 point off is because I wish that I had been warned about the sexual assault and rape that was featured in this story. Now, will I say, oh, it's a deplorable thing, it should never have been included in the story? No, because I feel like it made sense. It was kind of giving Lord of Flies kind of like vibes. But I just wish that like so many people have been hyping this story up. Oh, this story is so great. Nobody warned me. That's why I can't fully in my heart give it 5 stars, even though this did achieve a technical 5 stars. I genuinely felt so many emotions reading this. I was like, oh my god, and oh, I started coming, oh my god, so many times. And actually, I recently finished reading Golden Sun, but because I finished it this year, I'm not gonna include it in this video. Golden Sun, that ending messed me up. But this book is genuinely good. I feel like this book is good to read if you're someone that's like, oh, I want to read a book that has a lot of, like, this has a lot going on, but in a good way that will get me into reading. Like, this book very much so is a dude bro book though, because it's written by a man, features a man. There's gonna be moments where like the character's like, oh, she's beautiful, blah blah blah, but like it doesn't feel disrespectful to women in a sense. And I actually did end up liking it. And like it was very interesting because like at first when I was reading it, when I first got into it, after Io died, I was like, man, why does a woman have to suffer for a man to rise? And I said that to like both my sister and my best friend, and they're like, oh my god, you're right. But then I read most of the book, the rest of the book, I was like, oh yeah. Like, I was so ready to be like a big hater, but this book is actually genuinely really good. And like a lot of the stuff that goes down makes sense. I remember after I finished reading this book, I was looking at the reviews and stuff of people talking about it. I saw one review where a person was like, oh, he just really made Darrow overpowered and all that stuff. But then I actually didn't really agree with that. I don't think Darrow is overpowered. Like, is he powerful? Yes. But he gets kicked down more than not. Every time he rises, he gets kicked down, literally. And like, yes, does he like have some skills that like you could say are overpowered? Perhaps. But he's been trained for this. Literally, like, so much of his time training for this exact moment. Of course, he's gonna be like a bit over prepared, you know? As far as things go, this book was pretty good. It's my technical 5 out of 5 because I only took 1 point off. I really like the characters. I really like the setting. This does have kind of a Roman setting, but like I don't hate it. It's pretty good, and I found it to be a really good book to end the year off with. So yeah, those were all the books that I read in 2025. Oh my god, I hate talking for this long. I've been talking for so long that I'm like stuffy now. But look, oh my god. Ooh, ooh. I really do not know how to end off a video. What are your opinions on some of these books? Did you read them? Did you like them? Did you hate them? I would really want to hear about some of the opinions, especially on some of the books that I talked more passionately about, like Second Death of Locke. Did you like that? Did it hit harder for you than it did me? What about Don't Let the Forest In? Are you a hater of it, or did you like it as well? What did you think of like Red Rising? Like, I'm so genuinely curious to hear other people's opinions about the books that I have read. And so like, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I like this book, but I don't like this other book that you liked, tell me, explain to me why. I'm actually like super interested. Also, if you like this, subscribe. I'm trying to upload videos more. That's like one of my goals for the year. Maybe my next video will be talking about my goals for the year, because I actually wrote them down, like a handwritten list. 1 second, let me try to find it. Someone just came into my house, but ignore that stuff. Literally, I have a handwritten list of all my goals for the year. So yeah, if you read any of these books, you have opinions on them that differ from mine, or you just want to be like, oh, I actually didn't like this book like how you liked it, tell me, I want to hear. But yeah, goodbye, boop, see you later.